Watching News at Prime. Let's get into this discussion now. Border Management Authority Commissioner Dr. Mike Masiapato says more than 9,000 undocumented foreign nationals have been apprehended. He today unveiled a new security measure and outlining operations in the first quarter. Masiapato joining us now for more discussions on his media briefing earlier today. Dr. Masiapato, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. One of the issues that is really highlighted prominently in the media space are these new stamps that are intended to curb passport fraud. How widespread has this practice been, and where is it most prevalent? Is it in the land border posts or air, because that's where the frequency of the traveling is?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Toli, and we appreciate this opportunity as the Border Management Authority. Yes, over time, Toli, in terms of the very low level quality of the stamps that has actually been used by our immigration specialists for all this while, there has been some very serious fraudulent activities that has been unfolding in as far as the use of these particular stamps. So what basically has been happening is that because the stamps are very much basic to the extent that you could actually even get them in a basic bookshop. So what people will then do, or stationery shop, what people will then do will buy them and effectively basically just even, stamp people's passports for a fee. And that has basically been very much problematic. So that will be by people outside the system, but also by the people in the system. So for those people that will use them in the system were fairly people that will then use them, but still a stamp was not attached to a particular immigration officer. And that is why even if you find that a stamp has been fraudulently used to facilitate illegal migration, you could not link it back to an immigration officer.
Yeah.
Now, your question is which area has been very much prevalent in terms of abuse? Mainly, it has been land in as far as the abuse, particularly because you will be aware, Tony, that around our neighborhood here, people are actually allowed to come to South Africa, as we are also into their countries, visa-free. And on that basis, people will then abuse the 30 days, the 90 days that they are given to come into the country by keeping on stamping these passports over and over.
How much of this fraudulent activity with the passports has been facilitated by your own officials?
Yeah, so basically I would say, Tony, that it has been a bit of a balanced act, a balanced act in the sense that there are those people that are outside the system who will actually effectively do that. But at the same time, there are instances where this has actually been done by our officials. So like I say, once it is being actually used by our officials, we could not even be able to link that particular stamping or that particular stamp to an individual on the basis of a particular number. And on that basis, when I start to reflect on the new stamps that we have introduced, I will be able to indicate what we have done to be able to mitigate that particular conundrum, as it were.
At the moment, Dr. Masiapato, I'm moving away now from the passport fraud. At the moment, as I understand it, you have more than 8,000 vacancies. And these have got to be filled if you're going to have more manpower. And this raises even more concern with neighboring countries housing some of the world's most dangerous criminals. They are situated here next door to us in Eswatini. How confident are you that you have enough manpower to be able to stamp out the illegal crossings?
Yeah, so maybe on that particular point, Toli, let's start by indicating that, yes, that is a statement of fact. We are operating as the Border Management Authority at 20% capacity, primarily because our structure is requiring just above 11,200 plus officials, and we are now sitting at around 2,500. And of course, in terms of the conventional, what you will call law enforcers, or the border guards that are supposed to take care of the vulnerable segments on the borderline, but also do some work around the ports, we only have around 600. And in terms of the Coast Guard, we are looking at around 50 that we have. So that is a very serious undercapacitation considering the kind of responsibility that we have. Now, what are we doing currently? So what we are doing currently, something that you will be aware of, is that we are partnering with members of the South African Police Service to fairly assist us to implement this responsibility of border law enforcement, whilst waiting for the capacitation to come through into the organization, particularly in the form of financial resources, so that we can be able to put in the officials on the ground. So within the context of that, we can indicate that there is over 4,000 police officers that are assisting us in this particular instance. But at the same time, Toli, you will be aware that we also have a team of the South African National Defence Force that is also assisting us in terms of dealing with the issues of taking care of the borderline. Let me then quickly reflect on the point you're indicating. Toli, I did speak to my counterpart in Eswatini on this particular aspect, and he did confirm that, yes, indeed, they do have these 5 individuals, and these individuals are in their maximum security facility in Matsapa prison, as it were. And he did indicate that they have been in their country on the basis of them being the visitors of the king. And he did indicate that they are working with International Office on Migration to be able to facilitate them to their respective countries. So we are very much in touch with our counterparts in Eswatini to make sure that that reality does not necessarily affect us negatively.
Yeah. Just on this point, Dr. Masiapato, I'm taking keen interest in it because you say you've had a conversation with your counterpart in Eswatini. Was there an indication that there may be more, not just these 5, but there are more to come? A figure of about 150 has been bandied about. What do you know?
Yeah, yes, indeed, Toli. That particular point, I actually raised it with him, particularly because we did get some of those indications from the public media context. And I can confirm that he did indicate that from where he sits as the chief of immigration and the one responsible for the management of the borders in Eswatini, he is completely not aware of that additional people that are supposed to be coming through. So effectively speaking, he's not aware of that. But of course, he's also aware that it has been reported out there in the media, whilst in terms of their books, it's not necessarily something that he's aware of.
Yeah. Moving on from this subject to the number of undocumented migrants that enter South Africa. You did mention at the briefing that the list, it goes in this way, and I'm going to name it in the order that you mentioned. I think you said Lesotho tops the list, followed by Zimbabwe and then Mozambique. There is a story recently about military training, alleged military training on some South African farms. And this was said to us by the police commissioner of Eswatini, who says that they, through their intelligence, were able to see this activity, but South African police came to the platform and said they have not identified such. What role would the BMA play in this? Are you aware of any such training, particularly given that Lesotho tops the list of these undocumented migrants?
Yeah, no, yes, indeed, Tuli, we are fairly aware of the reporting that actually came through. I personally managed to see that particular conversation that you had with the commissioner from Lesotho. So on that particular basis, we had a conversation internally within the justice crime prevention portfolio on the basis of this particular issue. And that actually includes our conversation with our colleagues of the South African Police Service, as well as our colleagues in the intelligence community. So on that basis, the police commissioner had to interact with his colleague in Lesotho to be able to try and get some more facts. Whilst at the same time, a team has been put together from the police side, and of course we are participating in it to be able to do that search. So at this point, as the Border Management Authority, being responsible for the 10-kilometer radius from internationally recognized borderline, we can indicate that within the 10-kilometer radius, which is the area of our operation, we have not had any kind of an observation of that kind.
Yeah.
But in terms of our contribution and our role, one of the key issues we are responsible for making sure that the people that enter the country, they enter legally and they enter with clear objective, but not necessarily to do anything out of the framework of the law, as it were. And on that particular basis, our responsibility is to make sure that we take care of the movement of people and make sure that any person who tries to enter the country out of the legislative framework is actually intercepted and, of course, be deported. But if we find somebody being involved in any criminal activity, we then hand them over to members of the police services or even Interpol for them to be effectively processed. Now, if I can just give a bit of an indication around the nature of the people that we mainly intercept, particularly from Lesotho.
Yeah.
These are mainly your ordinary community members, and some of them are women, some of them are young women who are trying to enter South Africa to try and look for jobs and all of that. So when we engage with them to understand what are the issues, they basically indicate that the country actually struggles to give them passports or travel documents, and that is why they are struggling. But at the same time, we do know that some of the people that are leading in the illegal mining space are actually Basotho nationals. And those are the ones that we are looking at very closely to make sure that when they get deported after being picked up from illegal mining activities, don't re-enter the country. And up to this point, we've been doing some very great work in as far as that part is concerned.
Very well explained. Thank you for that. Final topic, Commissioner. You touched on the trafficking of children as well at your media briefing, and I suddenly remember that it was your sting operation of December 2023 where you prevented 443 children that were coming from Zimbabwe being trafficked into South Africa. I'd like to pose that question to you again as to how prevalent is this practice, but can I also ask it in reverse? How often do you see South African children being trafficked outside of our borders, because we now are alive to the crime of human trafficking? Jocelyn Smith, we're talking about a child that we assume is still alive, possibly could have been trafficked outside of the South African border. Her mother is in jail as we speak.
Yeah, you see, the issue of children, we basically take it very much seriously. And that is why we have a very solid relationship with the Department of Social Development to be able to deal with the issue of children. So in the quarter that we are referencing, for instance, you will realize there that we talk about, I think it's around 15 or so of the children that we've been able to intercept. But in that particular process, around 5 were fairly unaccompanied. And those are the ones that we had to, give them to the Department of Social Development for them to be processed through safety facilities and all of that. And the majority were basically with their parents and were therefore returned to their respective countries. Now, coming back to your question around a trend, how prevalent? So what we can indicate, particularly firstly in terms of the entry, we have seen a reduction. And the reason why we've seen a reduction is exactly that incident of the 3rd of December 2023, because at that time, there has been kind of movement of children into South Africa with impunity, without any documentation. And that is why we had that sting operation in Beitbridge. And on that basis, we're able to start amplifying the kind of requirements that are needed for children to move interjurisdictionally. Even today, we kept on re-emphasizing that particular point. Now, in terms of South African children being trafficked out, that particular experience is at a very low level. And I suppose the reason for that, once again, South African parents, we consider them to be vigilant, and also the requirements for children from South Africa to exit the country is also very much robust. That is why even if you are a parent of a child, you want to try and exit the country without the mother. For example, if you are a father, the mother is not there. We need a documentation from the mother to demonstrate that she is aware that as a father, you are exiting with the child, and vice versa. And of course, if the child is supposed to exit the country by a relative, as an example, we need even the passport of the parents. We need even a letter from the parents. We even need the contact details of the parents so that we do verification. So when it comes to the movement of children, we are very much robust. And on that basis, we consider that we are trying our best to make sure that we deal with issues of child trafficking, as it were.
Dr. Michael Masiapato, thank you very much for your time and this discussion. Very fruitful indeed. He is the Border Management Authority Commissioner.